The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Michigan State, you already know the news by now. They fire Alan Haller.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Michigan State saying, hey, you know what? Thanks for the memories. Good times. Good luck. And thanks for what you've done here. And I guess I kind of get it. You know, like I said during the instant reaction show, Justin, that he was a solid select director. Not great. I don't think it was horrible. Look, I mean, in the past era, I would say he was very good, actually. Like women's soccer doing great, gymnastics doing great, hockey doing great. You navigated the Jonathan Smith hiring well, but this is not that era anymore. This is the NIL era. This is the revenue era where you need your top sports performing at its absolute best. You need the donors all on board. So, look, I'm kind of mirroring what President Kevin Guskowitz said. I screw his name up every time. Thanks for all you did. It's time for the next step up. Justin, is that the read you have on it too? Did I say anything outlandish there? Do you heavily disagree with anything, or what's your whole take on dismissing Alan Haller?
Yeah, I'm pivoting hard here because I thought when you said talking about the big news, I thought we were going to talk about Amazon's earnings report. So now you kind of got me here in a surprise bind.
Sorry, caught you off guard again.
Piecing together my thoughts, I would say definitely that's exactly the case. As I've kind of described him the entire time he's been here, I would say highly competent, but not cutting edge. Sure. And I think at the end of the day, I don't necessarily agree with some of the narratives out there that, oh, now that Haller's gone, I think now they can just turn on the money faucets, and I think Michigan State is magically going to be recruiting at a higher level and all these things.
Okay.
I think there's a danger that people are deluding themselves a little too much here and just thinking that, oh, problem solved, like this is it, Michigan State's back. For example, I probably can count about, I don't want to give a number, but a handful of transfer portal football recruitments where Michigan State either matched or had the highest offer on the table in the portal, but kids wanted to go somewhere where they can compete in a college football playoff this year. So there are definitely ways that Michigan State can be probably better run in terms of a fundraising standpoint, and I would expect them to be better run with the next AD. Alan Haller, from kind of what everything I've been told, he was an introvert, and he wasn't a bad guy or anything of that nature, but he just wasn't kind of, I guess, built to kind of just seek money and kind of be a salesman. Sure. But I also don't think that suddenly you hire the new guy, there's going to be like 30% more funding coming in, and magically kids are just going to start popping up left and right on campus that are at a higher echelon. So yes, I do not disagree with the decision to move on from him. But I also think that the level of, I guess, overstatedness on, oh, Michigan State was broke. Now Haller's gone. Now they're going to be rich. I don't think they were ever broke. I don't think they're magically going to be like ultra wealthy. And I think that's fine to say, even if you think that they needed to step up.
Yeah, and I also said this too, that depending on who you talk to, like the donor relationship with Alan Haller was or wasn't all there. Certainly people I've talked to said, no, it wasn't there. But let's not make a mistake here. Like, there's never going to be an athletic director that has 100% approval rating from all donors. Like, can it take a few steps up? Sure, it absolutely can. But man, when like the people throwing the money around are the only ones making the decisions, like surely that's never backfired anywhere in the nation. But it's just, look, a problem that Michigan State has with the rest of the nation. But yeah, hopefully, just like you said, I mean, maybe not as salesy as you want your athletic director to be. I feel bad, like kind of raking him over the coals because largely a nice guy, just like you said. He was competent, a former Spartan football player, but it is an ever-changing landscape, and we just need to be a little bit more aggressive here. So along with that, though, I mean, it might be pretty obvious that it is the NIL. Obviously, you know, fans aren't happy with the lack of renovations done in Spartan Stadium, to which I would just maintain the best renovation you could possibly have is just winning some football games on the field. But I digress. A lot of people are up in arms about Spartan Stadium. I also said, too, the optics of what has happened ever since the Central Michigan stunt has happened, like why we're even still playing the Chippewas in any sport, let alone having the future matchups in football still in the calendar, is beyond me. The dust up against Michigan, where he defiantly says we are going to fight for the guys that were hurt during this kerfuffle, and then the Big Ten says, we ain't doing anything, and then he says, oh, okay, cool. Like, that might all be optically. I doubt that is actually a big reason they moved on here. But of all the reasons, like, what do you think was the biggest downfall here for Allen here?
Yeah, I think that Michigan State is pretty much let's say like a top 19 program in the country athletically.
Okay.
I think the floor, because of that, will always be relatively high. You can mess up a hire here and there. But I think at the end of the day, it's essentially on autopilot to a level of competency to kind of just solidly being there in the college football landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now what probably President Kevin Guskowitz is thinking, and what some of the donors were thinking, is Haller going to be the guy that can really help Michigan State reach its ceiling? Because the floor, like I said, kind of on autopilot. And I think at that point, that's where the answer was no. So I think his undoing was kind of that they don't think that he's I'll take Michigan State to its ceiling AD. Mm-hmm. He's just, I'll make sure everything is steady at Michigan State and will be respected, but probably not dominating. And I think if you need to specifically tie that to anything, I think it was kind of, as we talked about before, like it wasn't the fundraising type of forward-thinking, cutting-edge AD. And I don't know how many of those are out there. I don't know how tangible of an upgrade the next guy will be, but I also don't mind them thinking that they can go ahead and upgrade and then now going ahead and trying that. Because like you said, the donor relations were kind of like the main thing that's been mentioned to me, but it wasn't that they were strained or that they didn't like the guy. It was just that more so that the guys that were donating were the ones that are like all the way at the top of the food chain, like your Greg Williams, your Bob Scandalaris, your Steve St. Andres of the world. Guys, that it doesn't really matter who the AD is. The coaches are going right to him and saying, guys, I got to get 500,000, 1 million for this portal class and this and that. And that's fine. I don't know how much that'll go up with the new AD, but it's like the guys in the second and third tiers, the guys that maybe don't feel like the perks are there for if they were to donate, or maybe like a new system to kind of intertwine like NIL donations with like Spartan loyalty points, things of that nature. So there's those kind of systems that maybe we're not firing on all cylinders. But I also, like I said, like I don't think like suddenly Michigan State's going to be bringing in double the money, because the big money donors, if Izzo's calling them and saying, hey, I want $1 million for like Darius Adams or something, they're doing it regardless of who the AD is. So again, like I don't think it raises the expected cash flow a ton. But if you can win on the margins and maybe get some of the second and third level guys going, I think that'll help. And I think that's the goal here.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA playoff game. Finding great seats, though, that used to be a challenge until Game Time. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans.
The last 5-star left tackle that committed to USC. USC's been close, recently. They came in second place for Josh Connolly up there, ended up in the Pacific Northwest. And they were in the running for others. They almost got Francis Mauigoa, who went to Miami. However, Kenai Pepe is the biggest name by far, without a doubt, that Lincoln Riley has signed since he took over the USC football program. Yeah, it finally happened. I've been hinting about it. We've been talking about it on this show forever. The big offensive tackle is he's the nation's 44th overall prospect, according to On3. He has the number, and he's the number 5 offensive tackle in the entire country. That's how good he is. You should already know by now that Kenai is the younger cousin / brother of defensive tackle Kobe Pepe at USC. They're cousins. They call each other brothers. You guys can fight about it. But yeah, by far, it's not even a question. The biggest name from the group that's committed to USC so far, Kenai Pepe. IMG Academy. So he's joining in. He's joining the class that already includes 4-star Isun Tafa. You've got 3-star from Northern California, Vlad Diakonov. You've got Kanan Smith from Colorado. You've got John Fafita, as well as Chase Dinas. So yeah, USC's offensive line room got some good size. All those dudes are massive, but Kenai, he's the biggest, without a doubt. And he was one of the most sought-after offensive tackles in the entire recruiting process throughout the country. Originally from Southern California, he's been getting developed at IMG Academy in Florida. He's coming home. And don't forget, like I said, USC is recruiting like a boss right now. The Trojans are chasing other, elite offensive tackles. Kevin Obit from Idaho's out there. You got Malachi Lee from Hawaii. Told you on yesterday's episode, USC's coaching staff is going to make their way out to Hawaii sometime this weekend, and they're all going to descend on Malachi's house. All of them. They're going to gang recruit him. And they're going to do the same thing to Talanoa Ely, who's also over in Hawaii now with both of his parents. So I'm going to go ahead right now and throw in my crystal ball predictions into the pool. Just throwing them straight in the deep end. You got Kenai Pepe. That was the one they really, really, really wanted. 3 times for emphasis. Well, they also want Malachi and Kelvin. I'm telling you right now, Zach Hansen's going to get both of those guys. Not going to be surprised. Don't be shocked. It's going to happen. Back to Pepe, though. He's not the first 5-star that USC has landed. He's not going to be the last. However, when it comes to the physical size, as well as the importance of the position that he plays, then I would say, without a doubt, this is USC's biggest recruiting win at that position since, I don't know, I want to go back to Austin Jackson. And he turned into a first-round draft pick for USC, went to Miami. He's got a pretty solid career so far. Is he USC's next Tyron Smith, who just retired, and who, by the way, is a first-ballot Hall of Famer? That's a lot of pressure to put on Kenai, but those are the caliber of players. That's where a lot of people think Pepe can be. He can reach that ceiling, and that ceiling's way up there. Look, they're rare, but occasionally those unicorns out there, like Tyron Smith, Kenai Pepe, they appear out of nowhere. They fall in love with USC. They fall in love with USC because they're from Southern California. And look, it's not often that a true freshman can arrive in college, show up on a college campus, day one, ready to play, especially along the offensive line and especially at a place like USC. And let's just forget about asking a true freshman to start at left tackle, because that's just simply out of the question. Sometimes. Pepe might be that unicorn that's been lurking in the bushes. Early in the week, at the assistant coaches brunch that I was at with the rest of the media, offensive line coach Zach Hansen made the point that, his goal is to not just develop the guys he has, but to recruit guys who are better than the ones that are already on the roster. And by no means was he calling, guys like Elijah Page and Tobias Raymond or Justin Taonu lesser players. However, again, Pepe is one of those guys that's coming out of high school who the Trojans have missed out on during recent recruiting battles. And Pepe is considered as one of those can't miss NFL first rounders. I mean, again, he's one of those guys. USC hasn't had one of those guys with their offensive line recruiting in a while. Elijah Page, maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's the dude. Pepe's arriving with a little bit more accolades. And again, that's not a knock on Elijah. Elijah was one of the more highly decorated highly sought after offensive lineman in his class in 2023. But still, you're just making comparisons here. I'm making comparisons here. And even so, they got Kenai. The day before, we talked about the wide receiver, Roderick Tezion from Opelousas, Louisiana. I love saying the word Opie. USC's not done. If you're watching this episode on Friday to end the week, they're getting one more. I'm not sure what time on Friday, or again, when you're watching this episode of Locked On USC. Should be watching this episode of Locked On USC, your first listen, your first watch every day. But just in case, USC's #1 rated recruiting class. Yeah, they're getting another elite player to close out the week. The only hint I'm going to offer is the name. You'll recognize the name because I've been mentioning a group of 10 to 12 players during this week of guys who could commit next. The list that our good friend Scott Schrader over there at wearesc.com compiled. Well, that list is down to 10 names. Okay, so out of that 10, you're going to see your commitment on Friday. I'll tell you what, the more I think about it, the more I wrap my head around this, I think that's the rest of USC's recruiting class. Those names. With one caveat. There might be one guy that I have not mentioned yet. And I know some of you sent me a comment saying, hey, Mark, how come Brandon Arrington? I'm not saying he's out. What I'm saying is out of those 10, 12 players, those are the next guys that everyone feels could be the next to commit to USC. I think Brandon's a little bit further down the line. That's all. So stop stressing on that. But the next, there is a commit out there who could very well end up in this class. And the name doesn't get mentioned very often. I don't think I brought it up once, but I'm going to bring it up now. He's a wide receiver. His name is Luke Weaver, 6'3", 195 pounds. He's from Southern California. Lincoln Riley offered Sherman Oaks on 300 receiver Luke Weaver back on April 24th, a week ago. All of a sudden, USC's the team to beat for him. When you look at his, evaluations across the different networks, whether it's Locked On or Rivals or 247 or ESPN, on 3, ironically, has him rated the highest as a 4-star. They think he's the number 27th best receiver in the country, and he's actually a top 200 overall prospect. So they have him as a 4-star. Last year as a junior, he had 53 catches, 1,024 yards, 10 touchdowns. That's not bad. The other programs USC is fighting for, against, I guess, to get Mr. Weaver's commitment. You got Minnesota, you got Washington, you got UCLA. And he already actually has official visits set up for those schools. But he's been on USC's campus a few times. He's familiar. If you see him set up an official visit, lock it in. He'll end up being a Trojan. But before I get out of this segment, obviously Kenai Pepe, the big news. USC got that 5-star offensive tackle, left tackle of the future, the guy who's going to be protecting either Jonas Williams or Husan Longstreet or Ryder Lyons. USC's got, as Coach Henney said during the brunch, we got champagne problems at USC right now, aka rich people problems. But here's another name. If USC needs to go into the transfer portal, okay, put this name on the back burner. Just remember the name. I had a source close to the situation reach out to me recently to let me know that the USC coaching staff has shown some interest in, his name is Aiden Meeks, and he jumped in the transfer portal. He was with Texas Tech this past season. He's a wide receiver. I'm going to call him an athlete because he also plays on special teams. He can return kicks. He can return punts. 6 foot, 185 pounds. So I'll say this again. If USC needs to find a wide receiver out of the transfer portal for whatever reason. They got a space. It's not because somebody left. They have space. This guy might be someone that can play the slot at USC, play special teams. I saw his film. It's good. I mean, the young man runs a 4.340. We call that around here fast. When you watch his film, you see dude's got major wiggle. He runs really precise routes. He leaves the defender picking up his jock. He's got a great pair of hands. And I was told that he loves USC. And he also has 4 more years of eligibility left. And for what it's worth, Aiden's dad, Coach Riley, I understand they are on the same roster at Texas Tech together. So again, name is Aiden Meeks. Go check out his film. It's really good. Tell me what you think.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And with 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. XPass Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller is required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen.
The Florida State Seminoles score again in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Key addition to the Florida State offensive line room, Joshua Raymond. Come on down from Vanderbilt. He is a player that redshirted last year, former Under Armour All-American. He is from the Orlando area, so he's coming back home to the Sunshine State. He commits to Herb Hand and the Noles. This is a young man that can play guard. He could possibly play tackle, might even be able to develop into a center. Give or take 300 pounds. He has the athleticism and the footwork to be a guy that you could pull with, play zone. It really doesn't matter. Had an opportunity to look at some recent film of him when he was at Vanderbilt in practice, and I was pretty impressed. I didn't expect a lot because most freshman offensive linemen technically have a mile to go, if you want to be really honest, and perhaps even more for some of them, because technique along the offensive line is a lifelong learning skill. That being the case, I like Raymond because he's quite honestly exactly what I talked about they needed, and that is another offensive lineman to go with Jalen Matthews, who they just got, that is versatile. If you take nothing else from this podcast, note that in totality, the 6th transfer portal offensive lineman for the Florida State Seminoles is versatile. Could he play tackle? Absolutely. Guard? Absolutely. And again, perhaps at some point he learns to be the pivot man at center. That's a position I'm going to talk about a little bit more later in the show, but Herb Hand likes to cross-train. So let's break down why this is important. They've gotten 4 guys that they brought in for spring ball. Pettis, Pettitbone. They did a good job. They had some injuries, etc. And that's why I said, well, 5 would be okay, 6th would be best. When guys start getting hurt, you just don't know how soon they're going to get back to the fold. It can be hard. Sometimes injuries just continually happen to the big guys. It is what it is. So they get another versatile guy. But what does he do best now? As far as just watching him on film, Joshua Raymond has the ability to get out in space. I think he does really well. If you want him to scoop block, which means you move right or left, get your arm from the backside up underneath the guy, and you reach through, he's got the athleticism to do that. That's more of an NFL skill, in my opinion, than it is a college skill Most college guys are pretty average at that. But Joshua Raymond has the athleticism to do that. And finally, he has a frame to change into not just a power player, not just an athlete, but a guy that can do a little bit of everything. I think he'll be more powerful and be better straight ahead in long term, but I would say that about anybody. But right now, he's already got the frame to do that a little bit. In another year in Florida State strength program, and I expect Josh to be one of the first guys, if not the first guy off the bench at guard this year, you could see him be a starter for multiple years. And Florida State actually formulate, what a thought here, formulate a depth chart with younger players. Now, on the Portal podcast earlier today, I talked about this in relation to something that, ironically, Deion Sanders is doing at Colorado, and that's he's taking a few more younger guys in the portal. As it relates specifically to Florida State on the offensive line, I'm not talking about their whole roster because they're nowhere near what Colorado is in terms of how they build their roster. But they have to do this a little bit more. So the last two guys have not one, not two, not three, but 4 years of eligibility. Jalen Matthews comes in from Rutgers. He had enrolled this past January there, transfers to Florida State. And now you get Joshua Raymond coming in from Vanderbilt. He played there last year, but redshirted. So he's got 4 years to play for. That's two additional players with all the experienced guys they got. And Florida State signed a pretty nice offensive line class. Some guys with some high ceilings, some risk, but some pretty good athletes. This is the beginning of what Florida State needs up front. Not saying it's the end. This recruiting cycle, and we'll get into that a little bit more probably next week. I want to see how the official visits line up. There's some big weekends for every school, May 16th for some, May 30th for others, et cetera, et cetera. Once we get into definitely the middle of May, I'll be talking about it constantly. Who's visiting where and why? But for now, just note, Florida State's offensive line recruiting is on the uptick. I want to see another tackle added to that room quicker than what I would in most school situations. But tackle's the only spot I'm a little nervous about with Florida State moving forward, pretty much on the offense in general. I think they'll be okay. Everywhere else, we'll figure out quarterback in time. That's another story that I'll touch on just a little bit later. But Florida State looks a lot better in their recruiting efforts. They're getting the right guys to come into campus. Now, who commits? I don't know. To that point, I just want to ask some questions of you as Florida State fans, and I'm going to answer these as I go along too. Got a long list here, several questions that I think are really important in regards to how Florida State's using the portal and what would you do differently if you would do anything at all. So here's number one. So far, has Florida State met its portal needs? For me, that's actually a yes and a no, because they had more needs in other schools than, say, like Ohio State or Texas or whatever. They weren't trying to add to one or two positions. They had something at almost every single position they needed. Here's an example. They lost both their kickers. They lost their quarterback that was expected, like Luke Roman transferred out, and they lost DJ Uyunglele. He's done, so they couldn't have brought him back even if they wanted to. They lost a ton across the board, everywhere in between quarterback to kicker. Offensive linemen, they lost like their center. They lost their left tackle. They lost a lot of players there, and they even lost Joshua Farmer, Azariah Thomas, NFL players on the defensive side of the ball. So with all those players gone, I knew it was going to take a little longer. To this point, I'm okay with where they are, but here's the list that I need to see. It would be still great if they could get another defensive end. Is that realistic at the level Florida State wants? I don't know. I am very happy that they got Wilson, though, the corner. Jeremiah Wilson coming back home to the state of Florida. That's important. They needed a DB there. Be nice if they could get another safety, but we'll see. On the defensive line, they got another tackle. That'd be great. That's not a major need. And at linebacker, they've done a pretty good job in general to date. I don't think they have anything to worry about, especially since they got Stephon coming in from Nebraska. Offensive side, it's the obvious. Quarterback's taken care of. Running back, they've got a visit coming up. We've talked about that a little bit. But overall, I think they're okay at running back. I don't know the whole situation injury-wise, but I think they're in a pretty good spot. But receiver is the big concern. You lost not one, not two, but 3 guys to the portal. That's a lot. So Florida State has to find a way to do something about Hakeem. He's decided, I believe he's going to Colorado, if I remember right. But whatever the case may be, Florida State has to find some pieces at that spot, and they probably also need a tight end. But the biggest one originally was O-line, and they got 6. Florida State has done a tremendous job of finding offensive linemen. I thought it was going to be hard to get anything else out of the portal in the spring. They did far better than what I thought. So, again, they've gotten the numbers, they've gotten the balance with the offensive line. Joshua Raymond is the latest piece.